I'd like to ask from the RSEQ, Glenn Reiter, former athletic director from John Abbott College and CCAA president from 1986 to 1990, esteemed author, bestseller, we'll see, to come on up to make the next presentation. Glenn?
Thank you, Vince. I'm delighted to introduce Mr. Yves Paquette from what was FASC, then Sport étudiant, then RSEQ. C'est sûr que Yves est le fondateur de tout impliqué avec les collèges et les étudiants athlètes dans la province de Québec. Il a commencé en 1963 avec les choses provinciales. Et après ça continue toujours jusqu'à l'année 88 avec le changement à Québec. It's a delight. I mean, I've known Yves for a very long time. He was there at the very beginning of sport for colleges in Quebec when it was individual conferences. He set up the various programs and so on and so forth. And then, obviously, when it became time, it was a natural evolution process for him to get directly involved in the development of the CCAA. And he was there in '74 as one of the delegates. And he played a major role as things started to develop, like a membership certificate, which started to identify what the CCAA meant to individual colleges. He took responsibility for the incorporation of the organization, all the things that involved. And then in '78 and '79 was what was called the Festival of Sport. All of the championships were held in Montreal, and hockey just outside, but using the Olympic venues, which was kind of a neat thing for the athletes to experience when they arrived. And it became a real festival. All the sports in the CCAA in the same place. So these are the kind of things that are very important to all of us, and he kept on defending Quebec and working hard. And Quebec has a different education system. So we have a tiered process where AAA, AA, and A at that point, which allowed all athletes at different levels to compete at the level they should be competing at. And there were something like 50 colleges involved. It's quite an operation. So it was very exciting then when CCAA became involved, AAA teams developed. He was instrumental in football, which was obviously never part of the CCAA. There had been competitions with Ontario, and that had gone pretty well, but that's as far as it could go. 1976 created the Bowl d'Or, or the Golden Bowl, if you will, in Quebec, and the championship, first one, was held in the Olympic Stadium 2 or 3 months after the Olympic Games, when they had the new field and so on. And there were 14,000 people in the stands for a college football game. And these are the kind of things that Yves had the vision to create. AAA hockey was next, those kind of things. And they were very dependent on his vision of what could happen for sport in Quebec and for student athletes. And you know, you get these things of first impressions, and sometimes you sort of take a deep look and you think, I went to maybe my first AGM. It was at Mont Sainte Anne. I hardly knew anybody, was cutting an eye on things, and they were having a celebration, somewhat like tonight, and they were honoring one person, I don't remember who, honestly, for the retirement. So Yves is standing up there doing his thing, as he does so eloquently. And Jacques Cyr, who a lot of you do know, was running around making sure things are organized. So Yves, he turns to Jacques and after his speech in honor, okay, let's have the gift. And Jacques looks back like, what? And Yves says, well, you have the gift. No, Jacques says, Yves, you have the gift. This goes back and forth, and they start yelling at each other. And I'm thinking, what have I got myself into here? So Jacques finally says, what the heck? He walks over, it was in a ski resort at Mont Sainte Anne, grabs a painting off the wall, says, give him this damn thing, get on with it. So they presented to this mystified retiree, but obviously Yves' approach to things, they had put the painting on the wall to start with. So those are the kind of things you remember. So rather cleverly done, and a celebration in a different way. Excuse me. So within the CCAA, there were issues that we had to battle with. And through the 70s and 80s, it was difficult to get delegates from Quebec. It was all new to a lot of people. And he struggled, and he got some people to go, but he was always there and looking after what Quebec's concerns were. And by 1983, he got some other of us involved, John Davidson, myself, and a few others, because Quebec was hosting in '84. And that's where things started to kick off. He pushed, he poked, he made it happen. And he had that, like I said, that vision to make it real. So there were some great debates over the years, principally because of his dedication and belief in that you could find something to make things better. And some people were always saying, and I was probably one of them too, screaming at him sometimes, but one of the great advantages for any organization is the opportunity to have people with vision and passion in debate about what can be better for what goes on, because by the time you're done, it's happened and it becomes real. And with that, when the Sport Étudiant group, they put the high schools, universities, and colleges together, Yves left the college sports scene, and a loss to all of us for that. It was very difficult. Later on, he came back for several years, about 8 years, as the president of Sport Étudiant in Quebec. A welcome time for all of us. So with that, and the implication, on dit en français, that he had with CCAA and the role he played there, it was an invaluable experience for all of us, and I think a major role in the development of the CCAA. And that's why it's a real honor to be able to present him this with this opportunity to be part of the Hall of Fame for the CCAA. Yves Paquette.
D'abord, mes remerciements au conseil d'administration et à la permanence de l'ACSC pour le travail exceptionnel qui a été fait pour la soirée de ce soir. C'est absolument gigantesque et pour moi, c'est tout un honneur. Alors, je tiens à les remercier personnellement. When I was president of the Quebec Federation, I had the opportunity to pay tribute to people retiring, and in that function, I did have the chance to pay tribute to Glenn. Actually, it was half a tribute and half a roast, because Glenn, I remember insisting on the fact that Glenn always insisted on doing the right things and doing them right. But actually, he did half of those consistently well. Thank you very much, Glenn, for your kind words. For me, there is a saying that says some people will not do things because they think they're impossible, but they're only impossible because they don't try to do them. And I had that good fortune to work with young educators that were daring, dedicated, energetic, and that only thought of moving forward and doing what was right for the student that they had to care about, because we only go through life once and through the educational system once. And if we're not going to be taken care of while we're there, it's too bad. And I sincerely enjoyed working with all of these women and men who thought that it was possible to do it and actually did such a good job. And you see the results today of what they had started to do. But more fortunate than that, I had the good fortune of marrying a Nike kind of girl, which who's here today, Irene. Anytime I came up with a stupid idea, she would say, just do it. And I would do it. And she would mind the fort for our 4 beautiful children, Frédéric, Mathieu, Alex, and Fanny. Thank you, Irene. Now, I don't know if I'm going to steal one of your line, Jack, and I don't know if I'm going to cite this right, but I remember him telling us after one of those lengthy nights, the saying goes, if you spent your nights with turkeys, don't expect to soar like an eagle in the morning. Is that correct? Just about. In any case, when we reconnected today, all of the souvenirs and memories that we had were not about the long discussions about eligibility or how we or where we were going to be holding such and such championship. It was all about those turkey nights. But the good fortune is that they were more like the kind of soaring people. And this is why we eventually came up with an organization that was able to sustain so many championships, and it grew from there. I'm sorry, I'm trying to sort out some things here. Oh yeah, well the last one thing, I don't want to be too long. The one thing that I wanted to bring up came from a very wise philosopher. The name is Bob Hope. And his line was, keep throwing those frisbees. You may be changing the world. Now what I feel here is that you're helping so many young people, young athletes, to throw those frisbees. You're certainly changing their world and educating these young people. You, in fact, are changing the world, and I'm so proud that this organization has come up with such a growth. Et pour nous, autant pour les gens de la RSEQ que pour l'ensemble du pays, c'est un atout majeur, une contribution importante, a very important contribution to the education of our young children. There was a French philosopher that said, Jacques Maritain, by the way, and he said, let me rethink it in English. It has been said in French. It says, the extra educational spheres are more important to the education of men than education itself. And this is exactly what you guys are doing, and I'm very proud that there is a young generation continuing that work now. Thank you very much.
Thank you.